And we're live. Hello.
Hello, hello,
Hello.
hello. Shall I do the introducing bit and let
Yes.
Yes,
us
We
yes,
get
have a
going?
new
please.
moderator, and
Yes.
she's wonderful.
Hello there, everyone who's tuning in on the interwebs beyond pirating, whatever means you are simply engaging and viewing our wonderful, lovely faces, washed out and otherwise. You are here to join us, hopefully in the right place, for the panel of Bringing Your Table Online. So, just to give the little spiel and to give you a sense of who you're going to be talking with, let's clear out right out from the get-go just what's the purpose of this panel. So there is no shortage of ways to play tabletop games online. Deciding what to use, learning the tools without even knowing if it's a good fit for your story can be a little overwhelming and in fact daunting. But fear not, for wonderful viewers, we're here to discuss how to bring your table online, from resources, tools, cat herding techniques, basically just our experiences from varying perspectives and just sort of tricks of the trade, so to speak, about how we've either already transitioned games that were happening in real life, or just if you're like me, who's almost entirely played online outside of an occasional game in person that happened very rarely, we're here to just give you a little bit of our share with you our experience, our knowledge, and also our hiccups and moments of triumph, because it's good to have a little balance of both. But to that end, if you're still realizing that you're in the correct spot and you want to hear more, you need to know who you're hearing it from. So let's go around. You've seen our names either on the overlay done by our wonderful production folk, and also you just need to know who we are, because we're all lovely people and you should know who's talking to you and why you should believe us and listen to us. So I will, if folks are okay with me just doing directed one at a time, I'm going to start with Mariam. So just a little bit who you are, experience, all that.
Yeah, hi, I'm Mariam. You can find me on Twitter at media_junkie. I am one of the co-caretakers of Huetopia TV, on which we are hosting this lovely panel. I'm also the creator and GM of the Musafirs, and I'm a player on Prism Pals. As you can see, a lot of my ventures are online, and I facilitate even prior the current pandemic, a lot of games online.
It's the way and the place that the cool kids go.
Yeah.
So,
Or at the very least, a place where where the non-cool kids are able to confidently display that they are cool kids when they're not having to be themselves.
oh, that's the truth.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
but
for sure.
on that note, turning it over to our actual cool kid person, B, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
I love that title, Cool Kid Forever. Hello, my name is B Zelda. I'm a member of the Broadswords, which is an all-women, non-binary actual play RPG podcast online. I also run games professionally online. I also stream a lot online. You can catch me on Salty Sweet Games, Roll20, Huetopia, Broadsword Switch. If there is a stream that exists and they play tabletops, I might have been there. So I can be found everywhere. Look for me on Twitter as B_Zelda.
Wonderful. And turning it over to Kari.
Uh, Hi, my name is Kari. I can be found on Twitter at Utrio. I am a illustrator in the tabletop industry. A lot of the work I've done over the last year can be found in, let's see, any nominated book, Book of Season Solstice. I'm also found in the Equinox book, as well as uh, Unbreakable, which is currently I believe, Electrum bestseller on TTRPG. And my experience is I've been playing mostly online over the past 6-7 years. I'm not on any streams or anything. I've just played online for a very long time.
I mean, that is a qualifier in and amongst itself. So heck,
It's true.
You have the wisdom and the experience.
You have knowledge to share with us and a remarkable depth of knowledge that we will all appreciate hearing bits from. with the
Thank
time
you.
that we have available. And last but not least, hello there, everyone. I'm Angela. In other gaming spaces, you can find me under the name Phoenix, or more commonly, the Phoenix Femme. On Twitter, I am Phoenix24Femme. Basically, if you just find Phoenix Femme, it's probably me. I have had a name I've used since middle school. It hasn't changed because I have a brand and I stick to it. I am a TTRPG streamer, a poet, a writer, a musician who does work for TTRPG campaigns. I've done some for actually something that Mariam ran, on a streaming community of Welcome to the Party for us when that was something that we were both involved in at the time. And also, we've just sort of streamed in other capacities. I've been here on Huetopia for a one shot where we were cats, where I was a cat. It's very weird. These are the kinds of statements I make in my life now. And well, here's where we're all at. So yes, I have experience with primarily playing in an online format and also GMing far too many games for my own well-being, and almost all of them entirely either through voice chat or video chat through Discord or through streaming such as Twitch through things like WTTP or Huetopia. So, and also I have created like 2 or 3 worlds because I have far too many worlds in my head, and that's just a thing that I do. So yes,
That's amazing.
Heck yeah.
Also, I would like to give a thanks to chat for the comment of never apologize for being a cat.
Yes.
Because
Fair.
We're all cats here.
We're all friends
It's
here.
true.
And by friends we mean cats.
Exactly.
So now that introductions are out of the way, we're gonna let's get cooking with all of our various questions.
Our next favorite topic.
Yes, our next favorite topic.
Cats and food.
Cats and food. Honestly, truth be told, you probably could get a whole panel out of us just talking about cats and food, but that's not what you're probably here for at this time. So we will try our best to actually stick to what we have set down to talk about. So one of the first things we are going to talk about is a general question to open up with, which is, what have been your experiences with an online versus an IRL table? Or just whatever you would like to share. If folks want to go around, whoever is willing to go for it. Mariam, of course.
Being able to just get up and go to the bathroom. I know it's the most odd thing to say, but
That is.
Usually when you're in a middle, especially streamed game, you can't just get up and go to the bathroom when you want, or even just get up to go get a drink, or basically do anything, because as a recent sort of self-discovering ADHD person, I realize I can't sit in one go. And in a like in-person group, you can just get up at any point, still maintain the conversation. Actually, yeah, that's the biggest thing. You can still maintain and hear the conversation while you go fix yourself a drink, use the restroom, do whatever, come back and still know what you're doing. Whereas in a online game where you're presumably using voice chat or video chat, you have to put your headset down or something, unless you have wireless or Bluetooth or something. And
Which is bittersweet because sometimes folks forget to turn that off when they go to the bathroom. So still a lose-lose.
But
starting strong.
Aside from that, I think, especially if you're only doing voice chat, being able to riff off the visual cues sometimes is something I miss. But with video chat, it's not bad.
Can I pull from that?
Yeah.
What are our experiences with like voice versus video chat? Like if I'm doing online gaming, I need video. I've run maybe one game in my entire online experience without video, and I was talking over everybody. So like it's just not doable unless you have that visual interaction. Like you only get that, like that's an absolute in-person medium, but like online you have to take those extra steps to facilitate it.
Unless you have the chemistry, though, because I know sometimes if you're really close-knit as a group or you understand each other really well, you can work around that talking over each other. But yeah, talking over each other is, I think, one of the hardest things to overcome in voice-only online gaming.
Kari, do you have any other? Do you want to add, Bill, after that?
So most of my experience has mostly been through only voice chat. I don't. I may have done video maybe like once or twice, and that was when one of our offline groups was trying to shift over to doing online. Um, I think what you mentioned about like the problem of potentially talking over someone has definitely happened a few times. And for us, we usually like give ourselves like a second or two, of like silence before, talking, just in case, someone tries to talk but the other thing is sometimes we all do that. Like all of us wait a second or two and then we try to talk. So it's like, it doesn't really,
Mhm.
but it's definitely something that like as a group, you'll eventually sort of learn how each other, your different role playing styles and, how you interact. And you'll start to work around that.
Yeah, and so I have actually direct opposite experience than I think B has had in chat formats for running games, because I actually have had a home campaign that I've run for, it's really weird to say, almost 2 years now, in which it's been entirely voice chat, where
What?
it's been, there's been no video contact. Like I've talked to different folks in other capacities, and like folks have been like shared selfies with each other at points, but like there is no real visual format outside of, or component outside of us looking at Roll20, which is one of the resources we'll get that for folks who use it among our panelists we'll probably get into in a sec. But Roll20 sheets really are the only other visual component. The rest of it is entirely voice. And I found that for the most part, voice chat actually works, I think, if your group is willing to learn certain basics about communication styles. And but I don't think that's not to like throw anyone under the bus who, if they have trouble talking over other people. I think it's one of those things where, especially in this kind of medium, where I think it's very I would be remiss if I were to pass over the racialized aspects of that, where it's like this is a medium where oftentimes when we have a fully BIMPOC space, that's a rarity for some of us. So we're like, I am gonna talk because I have people, I have friends. Like I've used this, I've
Yeah,
mentioned.
there's this kind of like it's seen as rude when people talk over each other, and yes, that can be rude, but a lot of times there's this kind of like especially in certain cultures, communities I've been in, including my own, where we talk over each other all the time, and it's not rude per se, because we're just sort of like, it's a combination of excitement, it's a combination of kind of riffing off of each other that is there, that is like, if it were done out of that context, yeah, it's seen as rude and interruptive, but that's not what it is. Or
Yeah,
it's not meant that way.
yeah, and I think there's always with that the question of getting at intent versus impact. There's figuring out different communication styles, and I think a lot of it for me has just been sort of figuring out like what folks are willing. Being in a primarily voice chat based sort of way of approaching things, it's it's led to a realization of just when folks uh, are actually trying to like give space for one another, because I think there is a difference between folks who are just talking over one another versus like folks who are like, no, that is so cool, I'm so excited, I want to build off of that, and are willing to work respectfully with one another in like how, like giving each other the space to be like, oh, you look excited about that, let's build that off. Like even when we're doing this format where if I'm excited about something or Mariam wants to say something, like Mariam is like looking at me, is that okay? Good,
Hey,
go.
is
And
that
I'm like,
okay?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like part of what for me has been sort of fantastic about voice, at least as a format for running campaigns outside of IRL, is while there is a certain loss of intimacy and the kind of rapport that I think is very specific to being with a group of people who are, sharing snacks, making cracks, making jokes, and all these other things. There is a sense of like, well, when you don't have that immediate format, um, there's a need to really pay attention, to slow down a little bit. And even when folks are getting rambunctious, because I have had many moments of needing to cat herd my players. I love you, my home game groups, but you are wild cats and I have to watch you at all times. There's a love that comes out of that when it's something that's helped reinforce the rapport between like someone taking on a GM role and players versus when it's just, hey, no one's actually letting folks share the spotlight. When it's about like, let me share this bed of chaos which I have created with my other friends or at least my other players, that's different than just folks who are actively not giving room for each other.
Yeah.
I do miss IRL, if only for hearing somebody have a big full laugh in person. It will never quite be the same as when it is over voice chat, although the audio levels going wonky over someone having a giant laugh is always a wonderful thing.
All of a sudden it's too loud.
Yeah.
Like, I need, the gain is too high. I need you to calm down over there. But I don't know. It's a mix. Most of my experience has been actually really being online, and a lot of that was access issues and money issues and transportation issues. And online is very weird in the time of pandemic. It's probably a really good way of capping.
I mean, it's exploded with use, so that's
And
the thing too.
And now also I think accessibility issues exist even in online games because people might not have the best mics or the best internet connections or a computer capable of running some of the more resource intensive virtual tabletops and tools. Yeah, so but it is overall, I think, sometimes easier though, depending on like how you play, how you set up your game, how you what tools you work with. It is definitely a bigger leveler than trying to make sure everyone can meet up in one place.
Although, let the record show that regardless of time era, scheduling is the most difficult creature to ever deal with and interact with in any capacity. It's the one factor that
it's the game killer.
It is the game killer because everyone's like, we'll meet. Yeah, we're so excited for this idea. Great. When can you all meet?
I mean, online has provided more tools in which to schedule, which is nice, you know. There's so many ways for me to harass my friends with like, take this doodle poll, figure out when you're available. Oh, you haven't answered, let me email you, Discord you, send you a DM on Twitter. Eventually you have to contact me back.
That, depending on how you say that has a very different tone. It's like, they have to talk to me sooner.
Please.
I see you're online. You know, like the creepy, like just cat ears and eyes are just like, I see.
As long as the eyes are glowing.
Yes. Nightmare childs.
I'll say for especially online, communication is very, very important. Like even more so. So, like, I was gonna go somewhere with that, but then my brain just stopped.
It's okay. That happens.
Yeah.
We are perfectly okay with all manner of trains of thought, even if the stop you expect to get off on is much shorter than than it turned out to be.
Yeah,
it happens.
So there's a question.
There is a question. I think we could. Would folks, just as a quick check-in, would folks want to try and do all the questions at the end, or do we want to answer questions as they're coming up throughout us bringing up our experiences? Because thankfully, the other folks who are helping moderate with chat are providing a list of those questions. So we will do our best at the end of this, regardless if we're answering them as they're going along, to try and answer questions and give some space for that. But just a quick question for folks. Do they want to answer something that comes up right now, or do we want to save it for the end as a whole?
This one's kind of related to what we were just talking about, which I think it would fit kind of nicely.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question for people's benefit is, how do you feel about chat tools that do stuff like mute, reduce volume of players when the GM is speaking?
I'm afraid to use them.
Same. I feel odd about it. It feels like it's what my GMing style is very much. I am cat herder, but I'm not overlord. And it's collaborative. It's very much I am a player but also not a player sort of a thing in terms of I guide what's going on. So it feels very, I don't know, Banhammer-esque to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I only do it in like one-shot games where I'm meeting absolute strangers for the first time, and if a stranger is being very disruptive, that's like I said, it becomes more of a banhammer tool than a adjust volume tool.
Yeah.
I feel like I would be silencing them, like quite literally what you just said. So much about the games that we run, the games that we play. Especially when I'm a GM, I rely on my player collaboration to help tell this story. And if I'm in the middle of talking and they want to jump out and be like, "No, actually, the clouds were yellow," I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, let me just turn you down." No. Like,
But
you know what?
they are yellow.
I know. Okay, maybe to me they were a different color. My world.
And mine, they're fuchsia. Thank you very much.
Ah, there you go. And I am not going to, like, I cannot see a time or place where that would be comfortable on my own part unless, like you said, that player is being disruptive. Like, I don't think that is necessarily a tool that needs to be used, but it is nice to have it. How about you, Carrie?
Well, I'll say in a lot of the games that I run, and I know the people enough to, like I've played with them for like several years, and like this isn't a tool that like I don't think I would see see in use, honestly. Like this is definitely something that you would use in like a one shot situation, but even then, like if you're playing amongst friends, you sort of at least kind of know each other enough that, and hopefully you would respect each other enough that you won't be like being disruptive and talking over them, that kind of thing. So something like this wouldn't necessarily be used.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in some contexts it would be helpful if only to just get across the point that like I love all of you, even if I don't know you. That's me speaking, because I know not everyone actually tries to love everyone. I do that to my own, catastrophe that ensues from that. But um in some contexts it's a little harsh, but it's kind of fair to remind folks like we have 3 hours. We kind of need to not so much like force people to move along, but we have to be aware, especially in a streaming context. We have 3 hours. We if we're going to go sidebar that turns into an entire whole separate campaign, we need that to be sort of be something we talk about as it's going along, not just have it be like what we default to without having that conversation. Because I think that's part of ultimately what we're getting at, is that part of the problem with maybe that kind of tool, if I'm reading everyone else's comments right, that we all have, is that sense that it's like it cuts off their ability to collaborate, and it creates the air of like, don't trust us because we ultimately don't actually trust you. And that's not what I think. That I think that speaks to a different philosophy and approach to being a GM, where you feel as though that the GM has to have absolute control. And there's different game systems that like that's true to a certain degree, but I don't know if that should necessarily be the reflex we all have, that like, oh, my players aren't talking or like not letting me speak and stuff. Well, it's like, let's talk, let's communicate, let's figure out what our standards for each other is if we're actually giving each other space. Because as many in the scene are want to remember to remind each other of, we are also players as GMs. We are also folks who want to have some moments to shine. That doesn't mean simply if you're facilitating elements of the world or the NPCs, that's moments for you to shine. You might have more opportunities in a lot of ways to shine because of that you don't realize. But we can't let you be heroic, or let you fall in love with these random people, or go be believe the term in some contexts might be space bastards. In other contexts, if you don't let us get the details out to let you be a space bastard, I can't let you be a bounty hunter if you don't let me give you the bounty. There's certain things that we need to get across.
We can't make you thirsty if we don't finish describing that really, really lovely piece of food.
That went in a direction I didn't expect, and I'm all the better for it.
Just 2 words. Chicken lollipop.
I recall the context in which I learned of this. So we could probably keep going on that point, but sort of transitioning on to another one. The next sort of question I want to get into is, as we were talking about working in online sort of spaces, what have been some of our favorite tools to facilitate a great game online? So yeah, be as honest as you'd like, and what has been helpful, positive, bit of a learning curve with some resources, but what's been helpful for you to actually try and do things like voice chat based games, video chat based streaming, any of that kind of thing? What's been helpful? And anyone again
We
wants
want to
to
start like positives or negatives because I'm sure we have so many negatives to share.
let's start happy and then go to despair. This is a common way that I approach things.
I mean, my primary tool for online games is either Zoom video or Roll20, and usually together, because let's be honest, Roll20 voice and video should just not exist because it is a dumpster fire that is eternally on fire. But the Roll20 interface, once you get the hang of it, wonderful. I take advantage of all different kinds of character sheets because people make so many and they're so cool and there's such a variety. And I'm grateful to the folks that build those. Those are my positives. I have many more negatives, but that's what I got for positives. Like,
I think honestly that games that are one shot in person, and the reason why they take longer online is because you should be doing safety tools regardless of in person or online, but with online especially, like, it's one thing where I think in person you can kind of gauge by visually being in the same space and everything, and you can literally physically move yourself if you're uncomfortable at any point. You can do the same thing online, I suppose, by just leaving. But with just the sheer number of people who can come online and play a game, you have to go through safety tools because you can't assume they know them. You don't, especially with strangers specifically, you don't know who they are. Going through safety tools, going through making your character creation, etc., can easily take an hour, and that's already like a third of your time gone.
I mean, as somebody who you are going to be running one shots for strangers really soon, let me tell you the bulk of it. Like, I have a prepared speech for Roll20. Like, what is your competency on 1, 2, you don't actually scream when you're clicking things? And often folks are just kind of in between where they're like, are you not supposed to click things 5 times and then shake your monitor? But once we get past that, there's like so much housekeeping that you have to do, depending on how you have your safety tool set up. Like, I've been using Excel lately, but you can use like the show documents to folks, and like these are good things, but holy heck, are they time consuming?
Yeah, I think in person, usually a lot of the safety tools are a card you put in the middle of the table within easy reach, and all you have to do is tap it. You can't do that in an online game. So suddenly you're presented with documents that feel like you're buying a new home. Like, sign here, 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 and here. And
Really?
I wish there's a way, and it's still in progress, and I'm sure there might already be a solution out there or something or another, but there's a lot of negotiations that have to be done that seem more cumbersome and more extra stuff to do online versus here's a couple of sheets of paper and a card in the middle on in person.
How about you, Kari? I mean, I think we're kind of we've got 2 topics kind of folded into each other.
Yeah. Trying to think about what to tackle. All right. Well, I'll tackle the tools question. So my experience has mostly been using Roll20 as like an interface for character sheets, dice rolling. And it's great because there are many different systems that it supports, which is lovely. I don't use the voice chat or video chat for that because, like you mentioned, it's garbage. I actually use Discord primarily for voice chat. And for us, for my groups, my home games, we actually have like a dedicated server for our games. So we have like, a place where we can talk about it, that kind of thing. And it's great. There are a couple times where Discord has died on us a few times, but it kind of happens. Discord is also nice. We use it as like our virtual jukebox. There are various like Discord bots that are set up to like run music.
Why Discord over Roll20? Is it just because Discord you can use like YouTube versus?
Yeah, essentially. Well, I know before Roll20 had like Fanburst, and then that died a while ago. And I think since then we just kind of swapped over to using Discord and using like the bots there, because we were already used to using them for other like just hanging out purposes.
Yeah.
But it's nice because you can pull videos out from YouTube, like long music, and it'll also loop for you, so you don't have to like touch it after that unless you want to like swap music. And it's just very easy for us.
I also feel that just based on chat and everything, that one thing that sometimes is overlooked is that whether it's online or whether it's in person, to GM, you inherently have to pay for stuff. You have to have the books, or you have to have whatever. There is a cost to bringing your table, making a table, full stop, whether it's online or in person. I think in person it's a little more upfront, as in you have the materials and then you're good to go. With online, it might be overall less, but it's an ongoing, because a lot of times it's subscriptions for stuff. So it really depends what is worth your time and spoons, really, because you can of course you can find things for free if you look hard enough, but it usually involves doing more of the work up front.
Stares awkwardly in the person who copy pasted, I think, a few compendiums worth of spells in a private database for
Oh yes,
various
our
campaigns.
joke book.
Yes, we for those unaware, we have created in a previous campaign I was involved with Mariam, we created a joke book.
A joke spell book.
Yes, that involved 30 community submitted spells and such. That was an interesting experience that I will never forget. To the questions of tools online, good tools for moving online, people have brought up, I think, on different contexts, Fantasy Grounds, Roll20, Discord I found is really good. For those who are still trying to do 5e, but in more of a home game kind of capacity, Orc Pub is a really good character organizer for a lot of different things if you're still inclined to play in that system. And I think part of what I really like, at least about Discord, I'd say, that's amenable, is the server kind of capacity. For anyone who's ever been involved in any of my games, they know at this point I always make a server for our campaign, partially for memeing and partially for sharing postings regarding like game information and stream updates and things of that sort. So I think Discord's pretty helpful for getting folks for tools online. Roll20 is, I will say this, for positive and negative, it is not the most intuitive format through which to create certain things in, but when you are able to get all the material organized, I think it can be very helpful. And also just on the GM side of things, I don't really think I should get into just how many Google Docs I have in regards to keeping all of my campaign materials. I think the last time that I did the numbers, my average for just one campaign was 360 Google Docs.
Woof.
I'm still going in that campaign, by the way, so that's going to increase. It's probably going to be about 500 by the end of the campaign, but that is to say, even just stuff like that is very helpful. Like even if you're not trying to do a formal sort of character creation or character sheets format, or if you're just trying to get your notes down, Google Docs are really helpful. Spreadsheets are helpful. Formats that let you just write out those kinds of things. Even Word docs are pretty helpful. A lot of this, in terms of, I would say, my sense of what's helpful for doing things online is answering the question, what helps you get your thoughts organized? Do you need a Discord to get everyone wrangled and cat herded? Do you need Roll20 because you need formal sheets, or are folks willing to just keep their own personal information and you trust them? Do you want to do Zoom calls because do you have access to the account to pay for that? Do you have access to pay for something like Roll20 because if you want a lot of the more helpful features,
Oh, you need a subscription.
you need a
Yeah.
subscription, which
Yeah.
is
I was going to also point out one more thing, which is I've dropped a lot of money on Fantasy Grounds prior to Roll20 and everything.
No, another one.
So let me just say that Fantasy Grounds is good for certain things. It is really great for a GM. If you're still into wargaming like D&D,
Yes.
Pathfinder, etc., where you need that virtual map and being able to edit on the go and stuff, and it's great for that, but it is a pain to host it for players who do not have the same internet connection or tech setup as you do. I know this because I spent a year of running 3-hour sessions where 1.5 hours were spent on just connecting. So I know this very well. Overall, for me, virtual tabletops have sort of been phased out because my games have changed, where we do theater of the mind. And it allows, honestly, more playtime overall. But that's just me and my system. I don't, like, I qualify whatever recommendations I do based on the fact that it works for how I GM and not particularly for a overall it's best for everything.
Somebody in chat was like, were your players on dial-up?
It felt like it, but no, they weren't as far as I can tell.
It's just technical difficulties. Because
Just
that's a
technical
reality.
difficulties. Also, if you're not all on the same system, um, like, one person was using a Mac, one person was using a really old laptop, one person, like, there's all reasons for why things don't work.
Oh yeah.
And also the technical know-how of your players. I was GMing a group of players that were baby players, weren't very necessarily tech savvy, new to new to role playing games, babies. So there's a lot of you have to understand competence, like B had said early when doing a game. What is your competency level with handling Roll20 and all that stuff?
There's a lot, I think, overall with the tools that we do suggest, like whether we're saying something like Discord or Zoom calls or Google Chat, Google Hangouts, or any of those sorts of things, that part of it comes down to answering base questions like what's helpful for your particular game system. So do you need a heavy visual format, or can you do things theater of the mind? Are you playing in a system that is mainly improv focused, or are you archering to keep some level of crunchiness? What's helpful? And we all have our particular preferences. Like I still like Roll20 even though I fully admit it's counterintuitive. I like Discord, even though occasionally it has blips in how it likes to react to me being on voice chat. But a lot of it comes down to just what fits your purposes. But I guess sort of transitioning a little bit away from the more production end of things and getting into just the sort of difficulties, because we have come out with sort of an outline for ourselves about how we wanted to think about a lot of questions that might come up for bringing tables and games online. And I think we can sort of combine these two sections of adapting to video calls and voice chats and handling issues of disengagement and distractions. So for folks on this panel, what have been some challenges or positive experiences, less, I think, that for answering this question about tools that you use to facilitate it on the production end, and more about just working with players, being a player, keeping engagement, distractions, managing all of those kinds of things? What are your experiences around them?
Want to go first with this one? I think you had. I think this is the topic you had some really wonderful thoughts on.
Oh, me?
Yeah. No pressure.
Oh man. um, let's see. Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts here about like distractions. I think very much like with online games, it is very easily to get distracted. You know, you can't really like in a regular game, you can't tell someone, you know, to put away your phone or something. Like you can put away someone to put away your phone, but in an online game, you know, the computer is like a, a never-ending multi-tool filled with distraction.
You could ask people to be more present, but yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's honestly, it really comes down is really just finding the players to that really want to be in your game, because that's honestly the best way to get the most engagement is that they want to be there. They want to take part in the story that you're telling and to interact with you and, you know, get involved in this give and take that happens in role play. I do think the DMs do need to have like an extra layer of just awareness as you know, as far as, you know, keeping track of who's been, you know, engaging, or someone, you know, who's been more on the quiet side. So you want to try and engage with them more, you know, try and, you know, ask them, you know, oh, what is your player? What are you doing? You know, while all this is going on, you know, how to bring them into your game. And as far as like tips, as far as, you know, trying to stay stay on, you know, stay on task. As someone who is, you know, has a bit of ADHD, things that I do, I try to take a lot of notes. In one of my home games, I have like, I don't know, like 13 pages of notes so far.
What?
For and there should be more, because this game's been going on for like 3 years, and like my notes are scattered in like 5 different places, and I have to put them together at some point. But the best way is honest for me to take notes during my games, so it helps me to pay attention, you know, to what's going on, surroundings, that kind of thing. And having, weird enough, like something to do, almost like something to fiddle with, to have that sort of surface level distraction that you can still kind of pay attention. So for me, like playing a game of like solitaire, some kind of matching game, well, you know, it'll keep me busy, but not so in a way that'll take me away from what's going on. Like I can still focus on what's going on. And I need that. Otherwise, my brain just gets distracted because ADHD. Brains are weird.
Oh, aren't they? Aren't they? I do have some thoughts, but I don't mind going last for this one.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I mean, so what I've learned from working with a lot of folks who I don't actually know, like I run a lot of one shots for strangers. Not everybody, like even like these are folks who are willing to pay to be in a game with me, and even so, I'm looking at you sometimes in the camera, and you're down on your phone, or they're just sitting here, kind of like looking around, and oh gosh, also thank you to the subscriber. I've learned that's not always a bad thing. That's just how they engage. And I've checked in with a lot of these people too, because it's just like, is there something I can do perhaps to get your attention a little bit better? And they're just like, I need to do many things at once. And like, I'm a bit of a bouncy person. I don't know how to sit still. And it's just, I have to do something at the same time as I'm talking. I have to hold things, I have to touch things, I have to click my pen. And I'm learning a lot of other folks are like that, but in different ways. You know, I get the folks who just stare off into space. I'm like, do they have ears? Have they been, do I check in? And then I say their name and they're right there. But I would never have known from their glazed eyes. And a lot of it is just like, check in, ask what kind of folks are you going to be played in? What is your regular level of engagement? Like on a 1 to 5, I'm probably a 3. And then it's up to the GM to kind of work with that.
Like, yeah, it's one of those things where I'm very similar in terms of I I'm looking straight deadpan into the camera, but I'm already have like 13 tabs open. So it is important, like, and honestly, if I'm GMing a game, I'm probably not even looking at my players because I am switching between so many screens online. So you can't really use the same metrics for gauging player interest in a IRL table versus an online table. And that's fine as long as everyone's communicating and talking, and that's the key thing I think for both, but they manifest in different ways.
And I think, as with the racialized components to speaking up, I think it would be remiss to avoid talking about just the disability sort of components or the disabled components to this conversation too, where like sometimes folks, what reads or registers to a lot of people as lack of engagement is just lack of showing all of the signs that you are doing normative neurotypical indications of paying attention. Sometimes I am a scatterbrained person at times. I lose my train of thought very often, and that doesn't mean I didn't care, wasn't listening. It means sometimes that I have too many different thoughts, maybe even in fact about your game. I'm like, oh, but wait, does that mean this? Oh, but that could that mean that? Or is that happening? Does this lore thing mean this? And then I'm like, I don't have an actual thought to come up with now. I just have word clouds that will become vomited out at some point. But that is how some folks engage. Not everyone is going to be the eloquent, I have like laser focus attention at all points in times, because I can be that person sometimes, but I can't always be that person. And also, that's not necessarily how everyone engages with games either in a setting. Some folks are the kind of people who are like, if this were an IRL situation, they would literally be grabbing you, being like, do you understand what's happening? We are all royally about to die. Or like the cops are after us, or like the bounty hunters are chasing us. We're so close. This could be really bad. Like some folks are like that, and other folks are like, my character does this. They're not less invested. That's just they're going at it from more of like how, I guess, kind of an audience member kind of approach to it, or like how someone playing a video game might be doing something, and
Almost
but not
third person removed rather
yeah,
than
like more third
immersed.
person. And sometimes that I would say is also part of the emotional like safety that some folks do, to not go to a point where it becomes too overwhelming, because bleed is a thing in games, and especially if you're playing games that have content that can be very difficult or triggering. Sometimes you don't want to be someone who's building off of a lot of high intensity personal engagement in a game. Sometimes you want a little bit of removal or distance. But you know, you want players to be engaged. My sense of this, when I think about that kind of question about like keeping people engaged, is some of it is like could be folks being bored with your story, but some of it is also like you don't need to worry about being a performance animal the whole time, because I think that that's sometimes an effect of having conversations that focus a little too much on that component of like make sure everyone's heard it and everything. Like I joke about being a cat herder, and I'm sure Mariam also jokes a lot about that as well. But some of it is just we're facilitating games. Like as much as there's the term like game master or like dungeon master, any of those, there are also storytellers, master of ceremonies. There are various alternative terms to get to the heart of. Really, this role is just we're trying to help facilitate chaos and coordinate it and direct it in a certain way. Sometimes it's not very focused bed of chaos, and sometimes it's the chaos all goes in this way, and
Or
we're
it's 5 different areas of chaos, and that's where the true cat wrangling comes in.
yes, I would say on the tips end, I think some of it in terms of just if you are worried that folks have no investment in the story, or if you are wondering like, hey, can we please like just focus a little bit? Some of it is honestly just saying that.
Yeah.
Like sometimes it's about not mincing words and just being like, hey, do you folks still want to do this? Do are we like interested in doing this? Because there have been some sessions or even some like stream games or session zeros where we're like, oh yeah, we're building this thing together. Is everyone invested in it? And we're like halfway through and we realize actually we're not all invested in this. So, okay, let's back up. Let's restart this. Sometimes it's not about what you as a GM have done and failed at, or what you have a player have done to not show enough buy-in. Some of it is just the whole of the space that you've built together and communicating with one another. It's not serving everyone's best interests.
It's
Or it's not
honesty in GMing.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's not about your game masters let you down or your players let you down. Sometimes it's just maybe that context doesn't work, or maybe we need to change some aspects about it, or our expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a very fruitful thing to do, because ultimately they rely on what makes anything around a relationship or human interaction and communication work, which is just talking to one another. Because when you let a lot of your assumptions go uncontested, you get resentment, you get disengagement, you get folks who don't want to care.
You get drama that is not part of the game.
Yeah.
The bad kind of drama.
Yeah.
Don't bring that online.
No.
So
I do want to build off of that. I guess just adding one more comment about, if, you have players that, that seem disinterested, help them find investment in the narrative, ask them what they want out of it. What do they want their character to do? What do they want them to find? That kind of thing. And, once you find that out, you can kind of work that into your game, into your narrative. Most of the time, those players that seem disinterested will become a lot more invested in the story.
That is a really, really helpful point to bring up. Some of it is just folks don't feel like their character has a place in the story. So what is the best thing that you, if you're the person who's taking the role of the game facilitator, can do is figure out what helps them be more invested in the story. And also, I would say, as someone who's often taken on a lot, who's assumed more often than not that when people aren't invested, it's my fault for running the game. Some of it is also on the player end. What do you do to give space for each other? Like, if you actively hog a lot of the space in terms of like time and speaking, in terms of like narratively, do you create moments for brilliance for your fellow players? If you're not doing that, that's something to always ask. It doesn't mean that you have to spend all the time like, no, don't focus on my story. It doesn't mean that. It means that whatever stories we're trying to build together, because I think my sense is that a lot of what we're doing with all of these tabletop role-playing games is we're creating stories together. Other people are in your story, and even a loner needs the contrast in their story. Even Geralt, Geralt. I know he will. The spirit of his character will come out of the game and hit me if I don't say it right. Geralt will like needs the contrast of other people. You're brilliant. The brilliance of any particular character comes out from how they interact with the world and other people, and that applies so heavily to a game space.
And I'd like to add to that sometimes you will have that player that is just there, almost a bit voyeuristic in terms of enjoys observing more than participating. And that's okay as long as everyone's okay with that and they've checked in that it's like, again, goes back to communication. Yeah.
Those players scare me.
Sometimes.
They do.
They do, because I...
Are you having fun? I can't tell. I've asked you 10 times and you say yes, but still. You participate by saying two things. Your character is mostly just hanging out. Like, are you having fun? I'm going to ask you 20 more times. And even if you say yes.
And as a GM, I always hope that they one day do, like, like the character that's been silent throughout the story, and then towards the end, they have their one moment that is, like, impactful.
Utterly badass.
Yeah.
We're full disclosure from the GM side. We love those players who do that, who are like, oh my god, you have investment. You care about our world and our story. We live for this.
100%.
But sort of moving into the last sort of structured component of the panel, given that we've been moving on to communication, different tools online, what our experiences on that, sort of getting into a perhaps more dicey area, but also one that I think is very important for us to touch on, is safety online. There are a lot of benefits
I
to
thought you were
being.
going to talk about dice.
We're not doing dice. Not now.
You said dicey.
I was ready for dice too. You can't say the word
Why-
dicey and not bring up dice.
So we're gonna end the panel here, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. I will turn this car around. I see there.
Are we
But-
there yet? Okay,
Are
sorry.
we there yet?
Damn it. I'm trying to keep it together. I am trying, failing, but trying. But moving into a potentially dicey topic, not involving the clickety clack shiny rocks, is safety. Now, there are a lot of benefits to moving online. There's a lot of different things that can become easier to facilitate, and different tools that you might use for encouraging safety in different games, whether they're for stream capacities, for home games, or just sort of like one shots and one offs that you do with people. So, to all of our panelists, what are either some tools that you use around safety, or what are your maybe thoughts, tips, experiences around trying to better facilitate safety in games? It's pretty open, and I've been tracking our time. We still have about at least 10-15 minutes to touch on this, and then we're going to leave probably the last roughly 10 to 15 to answer some questions for any folks in the chat who want to bring up stuff with us. But safety online, tools, experiences, difficulties, or suggestions?
Go ahead. B.
I love, love, love the way that we have facilitated safety tools online. Like specifically, if I could give a shout out to, I believe their name is Kiana Shaw. On Twitter, she designed a beautiful safety toolkit, and they put in so much time and effort. And I think I have a link right. I might link it in the chat. But effectively, like enabling a safe table online has never been easier. And like, if you're not doing this, what are you even doing? Because we have documents, we have resources, we have icons. You want an X card, you want yellow, green light card, you want an XNO card. We have the tools. Most of the online platforms, if you do a little bit of research on your own, you can find ways to integrate that. Like Roll20 is super easy to import PDFs as images. You can have your players move that around. Similar for Fantasy Grounds, I can speak for that. Mirio I've used. All of these safety tools with. Like, there's not really any excuse nowadays to not have a backup safety measure for your online games, because there's so many ways that it can be integrated. That's as far as I got on that, but I might jump in if anybody else wants to share, what have their experiences been like? What tools do you prefer?
So yeah, definitely everything that you've said, B. The ones I use by default for any games I run is Lines and Veils, because it is a very easy way to establish things that are like off the table, and things to be sort of like, okay, let's take it as we play, depends on the context. For those who don't know, very quickly, lines are basically nope, never, not in this game, ever. Topics like, for example, sexual assault is a very common one, racism is a common one, etc. And then veils, which are like fade to black, like, okay, I'm uncomfortable with this, but depends on the context, and I might be okay with depending on it. I have the right to object as it happens. And you have that regardless whether something's a line, veil, or whatever, but it's a little, there's some delineation there. And it's things like common phobias of like snakes, where it's like, sure, I'm not fond of snakes, but as long as it's not a visual and someone just quickly says snake, that's fine. Or trypophobia, like, do not Google that. And various things. And those are my starting point. And if it's a streamed game, I do it ahead of time, because we can certainly do it during time, but it's something that it can be, it's a very vulnerable thing to discuss, and to give that extra safety for players, it's done online. It's done ahead of stream, and it's done with a document that anyone can edit, so you can actually add those things anonymously, because that's the other thing.
Yes.
Some people don't want to admit they have certain phobias, but to be able to put that in the doc without saying, hey, I'm the one who is afraid of cheese. Please don't add cheese to my game.
You don't want to have that conversation with folks you're not as incredibly
Yeah.
familiar. You know, you don't want to have the potential to be ridiculed. You don't want to have that. Yeah, there's always that vulnerability that you have to take into consideration. So I love the anonymity that is available.
Yeah, and then during game, having that X and O, the X guard, red, yellow, green, helps to, I hate to say enforce because it has such an authoritarian thing, but it helps to engage and keep those lines and veils in mind, as well as add new, because sometimes you don't even know what triggers you or what sort of brings up, like, I've discovered quite a few lines in perfectly good games. Like, everything, like, the players are fine, everything's fine, but it's just suddenly something comes up and I'm like, oh god, no, I do not want to deal with this. And it's none of the GM's fault, none of the players' fault. That was totally on me. And the good thing was that we were able to add that in and move on. So it's like consent is always enthusiastic and ongoing
Yes.
is the important bit with safety tools.
How about your experiences, Angela?
All of those tools that Mariam has touched on and B has given emphatic support for, I also like give a lot of support behind that. And I think also from one that I really like too, that I think came out of a few other watching like a few other GMs share their takes on different tools and such, has been things related to like script changes as sort of like a concept.
Yes.
Because I think there is from my experience, what I've seen is folks from the GM side of things worry. I can think of from a personal standpoint at least two worries that happens as a GM when you have to do something like what I'll get into with explaining what a script change is. One is if you talk about what a session might potentially have, that gives away some of like the oomph or like the surprises of a story. No narrative twist is ever worth your player's safety. Like, no, just I'm sorry. No, we're not The Last of Us. We're at least I don't think a lot of us are trying to be The Last of Us or any of that kind of grim dark tales. We're trying to play games to enjoy time with one another.
Yeah.
We're trying to create stories that might very well be intense and touch on very personal things. But the kind of rawness and intimacy that can come from playing those games don't have to inevitably involve
Trauma.
exactly.
Well,
So there's that, and
trauma that is not the good kind.
yeah,
Yeah.
and two, I think there's the worry that like that suddenly breaks the flow of things, that there's a sense that that suddenly breaks the narrative sort of buy-in for some people if it's like, oh, this is a big moment and someone's like, actually, could we walk that back? That honestly, I get that very much. That is one of my biggest fears as a GM, is just ruining what feels like a big build up and having to toss away that anticipation. But again, one of the things I found time and time again that I've learned with running any sort of game, with being a player in any game, is that people can surprise you in the most amazing kind of ways in terms of what they come up with to replace stuff. And especially when you come to a moment of having to have something where it's like, oh yes, this massive sneak creature comes and begins to bite down. It's like, uh, actually, can we move that back? Not as a snake. It's like, you're right. This is a massive draconic worm like creature that has buried its head out of the ground and is going nomph.
Yeah.
Like that is equally terrifying, but is a different kind of terrifying. I'm working with that. Like, and that's in a more fantastical setting, but even something small like if you're, let's say, doing something like, what was it? It's not Narcos. It's there's a recent PBTA inspired game where you're actually dealing with, in like a section of Mexico, like folks who are drug runners or the cooks and such. There can be issues of drug abuse and such that come in with that you don't have to ruin the story to move around and be accessible, because I feel like there's the phrase, if you use the phrasing accommodate people's fears, that makes it sound like, oh, I have to go out of my way. That's not going out of your way. That's just building a story that is accessible, because I think that's part of what gets lost in talking about accessibility in a game is just, do you make this as a game that people don't have to like pull their teeth in order to enjoy and be involved and invested in? That's just what a GM has to consider. That's part of what I think the responsibility of being a GM, especially, but also for all the other players, is watching out for each other.
And
That's what you gotta do.
and another thing to sort of remember is that the GM is also part of the table. They too have the same rights as players to use the safety tools and to X guard, to put a line or a veil or whatever, even in an ongoing game. I think a lot of times when you're put in that position of responsibility, that you forget that you two are a part of the table. And I think GMs sometimes can take the brunt of a lot of the stresses of managing players and not give themselves the I'm having trouble getting the word, but the consent to consent on things.
Yeah.
Or not to, as it
Yes.
were. To consent and not to consent to things that are happening at the table.
No, that's a really good point. I always forget that as a GM, I'm supposed to take myself, like, be safe for myself.
Yes.
It's hard because, yeah, you are just facilitating everything for everybody else. And it's easy to be like, I'm not a person, I'm just outside of this all, but you are a part of it. Please do not neglect your own safety.
GMs are just as much as part of the game as the rest of the players.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Probably even more so because they have like this added responsibility, you know, of running the game and facilitating the game. You know, you have to take care of yourselves.
And I will say this for players, if you see your GM is showing the stress and signs of things, take care of your GM. Remind them that they too can make use of the safety tools. And if they
Yes.
need a breather, if they need stuff, to take it.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate hearing that on this panel, and I'm literally here trying to talk as though I have some mode of knowledge to share with all of you.
You are just as valid, Angela. You run games, even if we have to remind you sometimes.
Speak these lies. But no, yeah. There's a lot we could get into with really any of these sorts of topics, especially around safety. That's, I'm sure, probably even on the event schedules, there's something.
There's definitely a couple of safety toolkits and panels and such.
Yeah, and I think someone in our chat also mentioned, for folks who are tuning in to watch this, like consenting gaming through drive-through RPG, I believe, is a document that got circulated a while back that was just free. Here's a whole bunch of things that I believe Kiana Shaw, if they weren't the one doing that, a lot of their material,
I think they were inspired, or if not directly involved.
Yeah.
And it's great for people who are new to, like, hey, what are safety tools? How do I know? Like, how do I imagine you're a new GM and all your players are new? It's a good, because it lists a couple of common themes that could be mature or triggering or sensitive or stuff like that, and it's really useful in that sense as a starting point for those who have no idea how to start these conversations.
Agreed. So with that being said, we are nearing the last roughly 20 minutes of our time. So we can definitely get into any of the topics a little bit more if we have some time afterwards. But we wanted to, I'm trying to help us moderate and do that facilitating thing that I know how to do.
Doing great.
Thanks. I'm only screaming internally.
Yes.
This is transparency. I'm actually quite fine, but this is part of us sharing that sort of knowledge that you don't actually need to be that put together for doing this kind of work.
Oh, Jess was a part of the consent in gaming tool, so yay!
Oh, they were.
Oh.
All the more reason to push it.
Yes.
Amazing folks were
Yes,
involved. Like, it's
amazing
not only
people.
amazing, but amazing folks have been involved.
Yeah.
I was about to say go look at Jess of Hope, and then I realized no, that's not Jess's
It's
handle name.
Burst of
It's
Hope.
Burst of Hope, but it's also
But Jess of
Hope
Hope stuff.
is quite appropriate as well.
Yeah.
But so we want to leave the last bit of time for if folks have any sort of questions in the chat they want to bring up with us, and we did have one or two additional questions that were already cataloged from the chat already, for folks to get into. Well, we could really get into any one of these questions first. I will say that my sense is the fastest ones to answer would be the ones we have about map creation and dice or dice roller. I am indifferent, and I will be that person to say I don't roll out in the open, and I also occasionally fumble dice because sometimes narrative moments are more interesting for my players than me getting to hit them again with a creature. That's not. I live for drama as a person. I want that delicious narrative, like, ooh, interesting moment. So dice or dice roller is fine with me. I like physical dice, but I've never been a dice collector myself. All of the dice that I have came from friends, and I have a full set just because friends were nice enough to get me that. But it's because of money reasons. So indifferent is my answer to dice or dice roller.
I'm torn. Like, how do I take a stance on this?
I'm like many of my orientations and identities, I'm very flexible. I am, okay? So for dice specifically, I have a lot of physical dice that were partially purchased, partially gifted. I'm okay with whatever players want to use because the one thing I've learned is I never want to take away the player's agency or the player's feel of having their fate in their hands as they roll it and throw it down and see what the number is if we're playing games that involve dice rolling. And for the most part, I am like, you know what? If you're gonna fudge and always roll amazing, I'm not gonna question you on it because, um, like it's one of those things where there's this thing about how to play right, and I don't believe in that. So as long as everyone in the table is having fun, I'm having fun. So in that sense, dice rollers, dice, it doesn't matter. And rolling for transparency, honestly, for me, is very stressful because there's this assumed thing that people will cheat if they want to cheat, and that's kind of like very authoritarian. Like it's assuming the worst in people, and I don't like thinking that way.
I gotta rethink my statement then, because I think I might be thinking the worst of folks. Show me them dice rolls. Let me see those numbers. I don't believe you. I'm sure you're all making it up just for the fun of it. You don't even own dice. No, I think I'm physical because I'm a tactile person. I like to hold things, but I do love the transparency of rolling online. I think I do a lot of stuff on Roll20 anyways, so like all of my moves are set up with like a nice easy click, and that's really appealing. And somebody else had mentioned in chat, there's also like the 3D dice roller where you still get the visual and the little tumble of the dice, so that's kind of nice, but like I don't actually use it that often.
For a long time, I wasn't a big fan of dice rollers. When I first started playing tabletop games, this was before Roll20 existed, and we used the old Brock Jones dice roller, and I hated it so much because it never rolled good for me, and I bought actual dice because of it. I'll say these days I use a lot of dice rollers over Roll20 just because it's convenient to hit a button, and it is kind of nice to have that transparency. I will say it sometimes can feel limiting because sometimes you can't really if you want to create that really like narrative moment, can't really it's harder to fudge things that way. But I think personally I do still like rolling like actual physical dice, but I'm okay with dice rollers now. Although sometimes Roll20 will give me a long series of bad rolls,
Right?
and I'll yell at
Right?
it for like the entire night.
Like at least like 6 rolls are
Yeah.
all fails, and it's unbelievable. Like statistically, that should be impossible.
Oh yeah, no.
Well, this is where I'm rubbing off of my husband of basically like randomness does include a series of like 6 fails or 6 nat 20s and every
I
night.
don't
That
wanna
still
hear it.
calls it that still falls under random because random literally means no no real kind of
Discernible
pattern.
pattern.
Yeah.
I've definitely had a series
by
of like
myself.
rolling. Sorry,
You're
I've
good.
definitely had a series of like rolling like d6s where it just roll like ones or twos for like most of the night. I'll be like,
That should be illegal.
should be illegal.
The additional question from that for folks, anyone who GMs, any thoughts on best map creation management tool, less for dungeons and more for overall world map? I have, for anyone who has been paying attention to me on visually, I was trying to comb through my RPG material bookmark folder, which has grown to have like 120 links to it. Anything from the International Speech Dialect Archive, which is a really useful for GMs if you're looking to actually learn accents from different regions with actual audio clips from speakers from various parts of a region. Very helpful. To things on like fungi, because I need character inspiration for druids. I'm that
Yeah,
person.
that tracks.
But there used to be one, I can't find it anymore, but I do, for the first world map that I ever tried to make, things like, I think it was like, it wasn't Incarnate, but there's a few other ones similar to that do help you build towns and smaller regions, and actually shifts the size of it. So if you're trying to do just a small little village versus a settlement versus a city, it does actually let you change the size of that. And then there's another one that's a world map that gets super extensive. It has a few outlines for like the shape of your continent, whether it's mostly landlocked or if it's out at sea. There's a lot of different things like that, but I am struggling right now to remember the actual name for it because I
Is
cannot
it
find it.
Incarnate or is it
I don't know. I'm thinking.
Wait, I think I know what you're talking about because I used to use it, but then I changed my operating. Like, I had to get a new PC and I had to reinstall everything, and that kind of slipped. Um, it was a really good map making tool.
I think I know what you're talking about because this sounds vaguely familiar, and I've definitely used this as well, but I can't remember
World
the name
Anvil,
of it.
yes. I think it might. No, World Anvil. No, it was
No.
something else. But World Anvil is another a good source.
It's a good source for world building your own like world.
Like it's making a wiki. I think it's more wiki related.
Yeah.
Yeah, and someone in chat did also mention Wonder Draft is a good option. I have not looked into that, but
My God, Incarnate is beautiful.
And I've heard a lot of good things about World. Oh, Orion's.
Y'all, I don't even like maps. Why are you making me like maps?
Join the fold.
Oh no.
Come over to the dark side. We can make cookies that are worlds.
Yes, we can.
You know, honestly, that is. I will also offer not specifically about worlds, but about map creation, but about world creation. If you, as someone, are thinking on the lines of you aren't the kind of person who can ever become a world builder of any kind, I was that person. If you want 2 games that will really help you do that without really trying to do so, try For the Queen or play Downfall. For those who don't know, For the Queen, it is a deck-based improv game where you are part of a queen's retinue, escorting her to a war-torn area, essentially, or it's described as nations in unrest and difficulty with one another. And the only reason she trusts you is because she knows you love her, and what that phrase means is open to interpretation.
I think the designer for that. Oh, sorry. Do we know the designer's name for that game again?
Might it be Evil Hat Productions or whatever that company's publisher is?
It was like one person who made it, not the publisher, the designer.
I don't recall.
Muscular Pikachu is their Twitter, but like they have a human name, and it's not that.
It doesn't matter what the human name is. The handle name
Muscular
is
Pikachu on
far
Twitter.
better. But that is a good system to just build a world.
Alex Roberts. Thank you, chat.
Thank you, chat. But also, that is a good system if you're looking to just build a world that has a monarchy in it and just want to create very weird of really any genre. And also, if you want to build a world as well, Downfall is another good system for trying out, which is, I believe it's 3-player. The premise is you are building a society that is bound to fail. It has structured around a certain principle, and it has one major flaw related to that principle, and it is bound to fail. And you rotate who is playing different people, the 3 roles that are central to the game.
Okay, have you played Icarus? Because I'm getting similar vibes, same energy. Like, everything is going to fail, but let's build this civilization and then watch it burn. And like, it hurts my soul playing those games.
That's also me on a lot of different days as well.
Oh, I can't even.
And yeah, that's the only other advice I have in terms of just world building supports is sometimes just playing games helps. And those are 2 I would highly recommend if you want to have a sense of like, I don't know how to build things or make a world. Play these games. They will help you do the thing. It's very helpful.
And no one would ever know. You would play the game to create this world.
Right.
Unless you tell them.
Those are DM secrets. Facilitator secrets.
That's part of the tricks of the trade is that there's a panel happening in the convention called, I think it's Everything is a Remix, which I think is also happening through Huetopia as well.
Yes, that is happening on Saturday evening.
Yes, and that title encapsulates a lot of the things of what good storytelling has, is that there are new things happening. People do come up with new ways to tell stories, but a lot of that comes off of riffing off of what's come before you and just other people. Because we are bastions of knowledge, but it's not knowledge that just came solely from us. We all came out of building off of what we saw other people do and thinking, I could do that, or I can't do that, so I will do my thing. And then people are like, wow, your thing is so amazing. How are you this talented? I'm like, I didn't think I was.
I had a good base.
Everyone just told me I was, and then I started to believe it? Question mark? That's kind of where we're at.
Yep.
And I think the last question I can see that someone had was if are there any accessibility tools folks found useful? We did sort of go over some of those in terms of lines and veils, script change. The consent in gaming document is a good one. If you're talking more like specifically disability or like transcription web caption or things of that sort, that's probably a whole nother set of things. It's more on the production end that I wouldn't necessarily be able to get to. Web captioner can help, question mark, but it's very hit
I'm
and
gonna
miss.
say as a player who definitely has an accent, it's not been fun. So example for Prism Bells. Everyone except for me comes out as Prism Bells. Mine comes out as Prison Bowels.
I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, neither was I. And also I would love to have closed captioning for my games because I do want it to be accessible, and I partially can only watch media content like fully immersed with a combination of being able to hear it and see it. But for my games, which I run in Surzamine especially, and where I use a lot of, I guess, foreign words, they have led to some very interesting translations. The names, the places, the descriptions of foods. That is just one of those rather. Like, if I had a budget, I would totally get transcription done and everything. I would love to do that, but in the absence of that, I'm really, really sorry. I am working and hoping for better technology in AI, which is coming at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a full breakdown of accessibility tools outside of the ones we've talked about for mostly safety concerns, that would probably have to be its own kind of panel to be addressed, because I think that's a topic that really does need more brought up in the space, considering not just for content wise, but also just the accessibility of voice and video chat and a lot of these other formats that we are using for online games, that it should be given the qualification to everything we say that these are coming from folks who might not be as who are not who don't have who don't have disabilities related to sight and things of that sort. Like this is information and advice that we give with the qualification of us working from different levels of ability than folks like that. Once again, not a necessary thing to mention, but I would be remiss against my own morals if I did not mention we always have qualified advice to give. This is the case with most advice. Your mileage may vary. But for now, I believe, someone has mentioned Make Live Transcribe as a web app. That's very helpful. And I think for Zoom has also recently started doing closed captioning for it. And I tried testing it out the other day with a friend. It's better, but yeah. I think there's a lot more we could get into in all of these topics. There's a lot more we would love to say, but we're at the end of our time with you, wonderful viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in to hear all of these lovely people and myself, who is also lovely. But you all expected me to be self-deprecating. That part comes later.
Oh, heck.
We're going to do our outros for where you can find us. And if folks want to shout out any other panels are going to be on, do that, because we're plugging your streams and all that. But let's go around. Anyone who wants to start with that, shoot your shot.
I guess we could go backwards from last time. So I can start first. So hi, I'm Kari. I am an illustrator, and I've done work in the Emmy-nominated book season Solstice. I will be on another panel on Sunday, and that will be only girl in the world, being the only femme face at the table, and that will be at 2 p.m. EST. So for people on Pacific time, it's about 11 a.m. I'm going to be on a panel with a bunch of lovely people. Lauren Morgan, Banana Chan, Imani, and me. And I'm going to plug one more thing. A book that I worked on released today on DM's Guild. I have to go remember what the name is because I am... Give me a second here.
Gotta get them clicks.
Yep. The book is called The Wayfarer's Atlas. There are 12. It's a book on locations and sort of like prompts and all sorts of things. It's very cool. And it just released today. So.
I can go next on that one. I'll try and be quick because I always have so much to say. Hello there. I'm Angela, otherwise known as Phoenix in our circles. If you want to find my writing work, you can look on either the QTPOC online media publication Art for Ourselves. We're going to be putting out a summer equinox issue, hopefully by I think the 15th of August, somewhere around there. If you want to check out podcast work I do, I'm one half of a relationship podcast with my partner of the Queerly Yours podcast. If you would like to see some of my poetry and other writings, you can check out my Patreon at and look for the Philosophem, which is the other name I use everywhere. And if you would like to also take a look at my music work, which I do for TTRPG campaigns, websites, and streaming, you can also find it on there on my Patreon. And also, if you just want to get in contact with me, I'm on Discord, PhoenixFem23, or on Twitter at Phoenix24Fem. I write, I GM a lot of different games. I stream when I can on different channels, and I'll be streaming hopefully in August for another channel soon. Updates when that happens. So that's me.
Okay, so I'm Mariam. You can find me on Twitter at media_junkie. You can find me here on Huetopia, either running a persistent campaign called Kahania, which is in Sersamine, or behind the scenes producing and cat herding and doing other things as a caretaker. You can also find me on the Musafirs and Prism Pals. And for Gen Con, I am doing 2 other things on screen. Tomorrow on Saving Throw Show, I will be on a panel with B. Talking about producing streamed RPGs, and then on Saturday on the Gen Con channel, so twitch.tv/GenConTV, I will be GMing a one-shot Magic and Mischief, which is a lasers and feelings hack with B and a lot of talented people. Sin, Brito, and Drac as well as B. And we stay tuned for all the other panels on Huetopia. And that's me.
Yeah. Well then, last but not least, hello, my name is B Zelda. I am a member of the Broadswords. It's a podcast where we play games. I stream. I am a professional GM with Magpie Games, which you can definitely sign up for if you are so inclined. I run games like Root, which is cute little animals fighting other animals, or Bluebeard's Bride, which is just everything horrible. However, in about 15 minutes, if y'all are available, I would love if you would join the stream that is going to be on the Broadswords Twitch. It is honesty in GMing by the seat of your pants. Because if there's one thing that I'm good at, it is not ever planning for anything ever, and improv gaming. So we've got some wonderful folks that are going to be talking about that very briefly. I have their human names too. We're going to have Amr, Morgan, Magpie Mirror, JR, and myself talking about some wonderful improv stuff.
And if you hang around and enjoy the thanks for watching screen, hopefully we will be rating/hosting the Broadswords. So hang around, chat, and join the raid. All right. Yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to talk over you.
Oh, no. I was just going to say thank you very much for tuning in, everyone. Also, you can find me on Saturday on Soundscapes for putting music in your worlds and stuff like that. So that's me, 12 p.m. EDT. That's it. We love you. Thank you for tuning in.
All right, do the awkward hand wave. Bye.